Web3 gaming is now a big topic today. And of course, we're going to be talking about not only what the trends are doing, but also take a look at maybe the impact on what we're seeing out of the SEC with the Wells Notice to OpenSea. How does this affect Web3 gaming long term? And we'll dive in deep with a special guest today. I think you guys will like it. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into Tech Path. Joining me today is Brendan Duhamel, who is a co-founder over at Myria. So Brendan, great to have you on the show.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so we got a lot to unwrap today. I think one of the things I want to get into first is you look at Web3, and especially if you go back to 2021 when we really started seeing a lot of projects like Myria and many others start to get their footing in. You have a Forbes article out here, Future of Web3. This is kind of a very interesting component, I think, in the fact that we're seeing mainstream media talk about Web3 gaming right now. Is there anything specific that you feel, especially during this cycle, needs to happen for key adoption? What do you think will be kind of that one thing that could move Web3 gaming going forward?
Yeah, I had a few ideas that came to me right away. But if we want to go with one thing, I think we finally need to have that AAA game that we've been talking about for basically as long as you just mentioned. We were talking about the AAA studios finally really getting involved in the 2021 cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't. I mean, we saw some good games, but we didn't see the sort of groundbreaking. They're using Web3 for a
Right.
specific reason in their game. There were some tack-ons and the like, but as you and I both know, there are some very cool things that you can do in Web3 that you can't do in Web2, and I think we're starting to see that now from the top studios. And when they come out with that one, that finally makes people notice that there are things. There are aspects of blockchain that we can take advantage of in a gaming context that we weren't able to do before. I think that's probably the thing that we're waiting for. We hope that we're building the infrastructure and everything else in order to allow
Right.
that. But that's the thing.
Well, I think your point is well taken. I think you look at not only the developers that are starting to come over from traditional studios into Web3. We see more and more growth in that direction. But also, I think gamers are starting to loosen up a little bit. I was looking at this data that came out of this Forbes article. Gaming accounts for 30% of blockchain activity. That's insane. I didn't realize that high,
I know.
attracting about, yeah,
I saw that
2
recently.
million
Yeah.
daily actives on what we're seeing. This, of course, coming in from DApp Radar. Also, Polygon, Ethereum scaleless solution attracted over a million daily wallets. We've seen a little bit of that move first 3 months of 2024 up almost 500%, which again, significant growth here for the future. Is this, Brendan, do you think this is the cycle where we finally see people accepting Web3 gaming and its principles of how gaming could go forward?
I think so. I think so. I think when it's the first cycle where it comes around, you have the highs of reacting to it and thinking that it's a
Right.
possibility. But I think one thing that we don't appreciate when we're not in the gaming world, and I wasn't for a long time. I'm not a game industry expert. Before I co-founded Myria, I was in Bitcoin way back in the day, and then I was in trade finance, always blockchain for the last 12 years of my life, but relatively new to gaming. And I think as an outsider back then, I thought, oh, the use case is so perfect, we just get it done.
Right.
But people don't appreciate how long these development life cycles are for the top games. And so having the gut reaction, this is clearly a good use case, is a very different thing than being able to get a game out, which takes 3 or 5 years to put together. And so I think now we've had the time to appreciate how good these ideas could be applied to the gaming sector. And so this does seem like the cycle to me that things really in sort of mainstream. We've seen awesome things already in Web3 generally for games, but in the mainstream consciousness of it, I think this is the cycle.
Yeah, I always say just follow the money. If you follow the
Yeah.
money in the markets, you're going to find where market fits happen. Web3 gaming market size right now valued at almost 27 billion. This is in 2023, so that's probably going to be up another 10, maybe 15% for 24, but it's anticipated to see an annual growth rate of over 20, well, almost 20% between 24 and 32. That could actually be underreported if we're seeing the kind of growth numbers year over year within this. And I think to your point, all it's going to do is take one, and the dominoes I think will start to fall. Much like in gaming, once you see a big breakout, every studio out there is trying to create a knockoff of that. I think that will be the case
Exactly right.
with Web3. When
Yeah, and
you
that's
look
the
at,
growth rate specifically of Web3 games, right? And then
yes, yes,
you compound that with the fact that the gaming isn't slowing down anytime soon in its own right, and you have a recipe for serious growth.
yeah,
Yeah.
for big growth. Well, and I think the key here, when you look at in general just Web3, because many people will look at how does blockchain really apply? Is this just another generation of gaming? Is it the next evolution? And in reality, yeah, sure, it is, but there is a lot more in the principal nature of this around holding your own asset and kind of the, just the game theory of how NFTs work and in-game assets work. So I think that's the big one that is yet to really be a big factor here. So I want to look at how Myria can basically look at other platforms, but also at the same time, how do you guys put together your strategy for growing Myria with all this focus now coming in on Web3 gaming? I'm looking at a post you guys did, 500 days of Myria node operations for the next 10. You got some big offers here, but when you look at the not only the nodes themselves, but in general, how you guys see this working, whether it's cross-platform or within game devs that are maybe coming over from traditional, studios. Why go this route? Why would they say, "Hey, I'm going to go, bet my career on Web3 gaming now instead of the traditional route"? What do you think?
Right. Well, I hope that a lot of game developers, as you say, are following the money as well, right? I don't want to, there are other incentives that are of course out there, and those are important as well. But as and when, and we've had this priority from the beginning, which is to make high quality games, of course. But the reason we want to make high quality games is so that game developers say to themselves, where can I attract the most users? And the more and more clear the answer becomes it's in Web3, then the more and more likely that these developers are going to move over. So follow the money, but more practically follow the users, right? So that means creating an extremely simple user experience. What does that mean? Well, at the base, that means incredible scaling, which is why we started Myria in the first place.
Right.
And that means incredible scaling, not just on our platform, but the ability to be connected with the rest of the Web3 world. Your point about sort of cross-platform is a good question. It's not priority number one for Myria. I have heard about cross-platform basically since 2014, I want to say it was, when we had colored coins in the Bitcoin world.
Hmm.
I think a better priority in general is to build a really scalable platform that has the capacity to be multi-platform, but make sure that the base platform is up to par and is able to bring on the number of users that we need. So scalability and bringing over users first and foremost with our own really good games,
Right.
as well as good games from our partners. I think then it becomes an easy decision. It's not really a gamble with your career if there are already users that are excited about stuff being built and you are providing for a market demand that is clearly there. So
Yeah.
users first and foremost, I think, is extremely important.
Well, it's going to be, well, that gets into adoption curves too, not only from the development side, but also from the participant side, in terms of the gamers themselves, looking at
Right.
how they, isolate in on one. We did a video on this topic last week, and it was Sony debuting their Soneium Monanto testnet, which is a Web3 developer incubator. So they're doing a whole layer. This is running on Ethereum. But the idea behind this is principled in nature, where you have a major company like Sony stepping out and making these kind of initiatives. This is most likely going to draw in quite a few other names within technology, maybe even outside the gaming sector, even though Sony obviously being one of the leaders out there. But what are your thoughts on how this could affect Web3 gaming in general?
I think you summarized it well. I think as much as we'd like to think that all of us as technologists are very sort of risk prone, that's not always the case, and it definitely gives a lot of legitimacy to what we're doing. I don't always know that the largest projects out there. I saw this a lot when I was in the banking world of blockchain. Often it was sort of the driver to get people interested with
Right.
sort of these big consortia and the like that said, oh, had the right names, had the right executives on board. But even if the best innovation didn't come from that, it was definitely the stamp of approval that was required for not only individuals but
Yep.
smaller studios, smaller shops overall to come together and say, okay, yeah, this is something that we're willing to spend money on and the like. So, do I think that that consortium is going to be where we finally have the breakthrough? I don't know. It hasn't always been that way, but it definitely does give us as I say, the sort of green light for the other people out there that were hesitant before. It's a huge help for
Yeah, I
that.
think, yeah, I think the what it does is represent kind of the validity of the space, which it makes it clear. Sony being, one of the giants out there. You look at what their Spark program is going to be offering. They have a whole developers package. But to your point, there's only going to be so many they can take. The
Right.
likelihood is this going to draw a lot more in. So we're going to probably see a lot of recipients going to other chains, going to other projects, maybe over to something like what you guys are doing at Myria, that could really open it up for widespread adoption, both from the development side, but also from the gaming side itself. So I would agree with you. I think there's a lot.
And on that, I find that a lot of the times those big, sort of big company, big corporate consortia that get started, they can be quite open about. Look, they want their project to do well, but they also have a lot of cash that they're sitting on, and so in the end, if they are sort of incentivizing projects to go find the best chain that's out there and they go somewhere else, if they can still market that they were the one that sort of got them started and they didn't end up on their own chain but elsewhere, they're still going to be happy with that. So
Yeah.
I think we see that process happen a lot.
Interesting. Oasis partners with they're doing a big financial connection, but
Yeah.
mainly this is tied with the potential growth around Web3 gaming in Japan. Japan's also moved very aggressively from I won't say a legislative, but a regulation standpoint, and from a cultural standpoint, they've really kind of embraced this next generation of technology. And we're seeing this throughout Asia. We're seeing this most likely, even though it's not totally identifiable yet, in the seems to have the new hub for studio development. Do you think that's going to hold its lead for a while? I know you guys are based out of Singapore. What are your
Right.
thoughts of Asia being the mecca for gaming development?
Well, to your point about it being even legislatively welcoming now in Asia, I think you're right. We saw just last week that the Prime Minister of Japan keynoted one of their biggest crypto conferences out there, WebEx. So it's a cultural, it's a political. I think you're right that it's even a legislative move to welcome. And I think that is going to make a huge difference. So I'm, as most people listening can probably guess from my accent, I'm American, but decided to set up Myria in Singapore, and that was calculated, right? That wasn't random. And I think we're going to see more of that up until the Western, and as you just mentioned, Mika coming out of the EU, until Western nations sort of figure out that this is a huge opportunity that they're missing out on by not having the regulatory clarity and acceptance that we're seeing in Asia. I think we're going to continue to see Asia move ahead in terms of a center point for a lot of the innovation. But as I say, that may well incentivize Western governments to go, okay, yeah, we have to do the same. And I think that's great about sort of our globalized world, right? Is we do have sort of inner governmental competition as well. And if you don't get your regulatory act together, then you're going to lose out on serious innovation that could be happening in your country.
Well, to your point, the Japanese Prime Minister keynoting WebEx, just to what you just said a second ago, Sony launching an ETH2, and then we have the SEC basically waging war on really on art and freedom of speech to a certain extent. I mean, for OpenSea to be getting a Wells notice will affect thousands of American companies, possibly tens of thousands of American creators, and then some of the biggest brands out there. Do you think that we'll start to see projects and initiatives, especially around the NFT marketplaces, to continually migrate offshore away from the United States? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, two things I want to say about that. I think, well, first of all, yes, we'll continue to see that. But I think a similar sort of parallel migration that is possible is just to more decentralization, right? So we're always harping about decentralization, but originally, sort of in the Bitcoin white paper, there was a reason for decentralization, and that was because we knew that this reaction would eventually come from the nation state. Not to get too political about it, but we anticipated this 12 years ago. And so, yes, we'll try to find sort of more welcoming jurisdictions. That could be in Asia, that could be in the EU, that could be all over the place. But we're also just going to recognize that in general, we shouldn't be so defenseless from sort of one statement from one government on the earth to take down what should be a decentralized system. So yes, it's going to push us into more welcoming jurisdictions, but if it can push us into more decentralized systems that are more robust in general, I think that's a good thing. The other thing I'd say is we have an election coming up, right? And so I think that's also maybe why people aren't reacting as much as I would have anticipated to this most recent news, is because with a new administration coming in, things change. And again, I think that also needs to push us to decentralization, the sort of weird in-between world that we're in right now that shouldn't need to be there if we're robust enough because of the decentralization to not be too concerned about a particular administration or another being in office.
Well, I think the point you're getting at is, innovation normally always wins in the end. You look at some of the statistics right now. This was on some of the NFT statistics. I'll zoom in on that a little bit. NFT market worldwide now projected to see about a 3.2 billion. This is in 2027. I still think this might be underreported because of the potential accelerated growth we might see in terms of adoption. But I was surprised that at this point right here, market is expected to have around 20 million users by 2027. Even if that's just in the current growth, much less if we see accelerated growth. If we do see a sector or an economic region like Asia, or even the EU, the Middle East, South America, all of which could adapt very quickly to an NFT framework. And if that happens, we'll probably see quite a bit more of that growth. All of that is surprising to me to see the restrictions that were coming out of the United States. And I hope, to your point, that we do get, a pro-crypto administration in the White House that will probably give us at least a little bit of indication. I'm just kind of curious, you as a founder, would you ever move your company? Let's say the United States says we're going to set a regulatory environment that's embracing it, creators, gaming companies, crypto projects, all that, and it's gonna welcome those people into the United States. Do you think founders like you would say, okay, we're gonna repatriate and come back to the United States and start development here? Would you do that?
Yeah, I see no reason why. Why not? I would say, yeah. I mean, this is the thing that I was trying to get across with the move to Singapore, right? Is that we went there because of the regulatory benefits and because of the clarity and everything else. And I think, look, we want to do what's best for our community and for our partners and everything else. And crypto, obviously, where the regulations are the kindest is a huge factor in that. So yeah, I can say confidently that we would have it on our radar if the regulation ever changed, so that it was really convenient and really welcoming and everything else. It's a big factor for us.
They had so many interesting topics there. I think it was number 22. Let me scan down to it real quick because I thought this was interesting right here. Here we go. I think this is, art segment round, recorded sales, about 140 billion. And this is 2023. And then you look at just in general, in-game NFTs, now most popular category. So that's right in the wheelhouse of what you guys are doing. Most likely this is going to accelerate quite a bit. Now you're getting into a scenario where it has become, because now you've got the Wells notice that, who knows what an NFT is really in terms of the idea of a security. But do you think this is going to slow the gaming industry down at all, what happened with the OpenSea Wells notice?
No, no, I don't think so. It's important, right? Like, I don't want to minimize what happened. It was big news, and it's concerning. But whether it slows anybody down, I don't think so. I think maybe if they would have done this, call it 6-7 years ago, it would have slowed some people down. I think that's possible, but I think there are too many people in too many regions around the world now who are convinced that this is where gaming must go. We can no longer put more and more of our energy and time and spend more and more of our hard-earned money in games and not have genuine ownership of what we're doing in there. To me, that's the definition of an NFT, right? It's just the ownership aspect of it. And so I don't think it slows anybody down. It might definitely kick, as you were saying earlier, kick some very innovative companies that would do a lot of good to have in the US out of the US, but I don't think anything beyond that.
Well, that is the challenge that we're facing right now, I think, here within the United States is just the limitation on some of the innovation that could be happening around blockchain, especially as Web3 really kicks off. Gaming will most likely be the genesis of where growth is going to come from, but this is going to flow into almost every kind of business out there in terms of gamification for NFTs, integration into gaming. All that's it's just a matter of time before we truly see it. So I agree with you. Hey, Brendan, it's been great having you on. Thanks so much for your insights, and especially around Web3. If you guys want to check out a little bit more about what Myria is doing, we'll leave a link down below. Whether you're a developer or maybe a gamer, you guys can learn a little bit more about what they're up to. Thanks for stopping in. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me.
You bet. All right, so you guys are maybe tuned in over on the podcast side of things. Make sure and get over here to the YouTube channel, because this is a place where you get kind of a full vision of what we do as a show, and that is to focus in on blockchain, the innovation, and of course it affects financial things like the gaming, the Web3 markets. Also, it affects a lot around the self-sovereignty of what you might be doing with your own finances. So make sure and subscribe to the channel right now. Just take a little time, hit that little subscribe button, and if you do want to catch our live streams, which we do usually Monday through Friday, we try to get to as many as we can. Hit the little bell, you'll get a notification of that. And of course, catch me out there on X, @Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.